Hello, everyone. This is Small Town Voice Sophia. I want to talk about censorship today because I am in Beijing and I am a self-media person, so I'm probably more qualified than many to talk about this topic. Little bit background, I am otherwise based in East Coast of the US, but I do create content. And then once it's done, I'll give it to a business partner in China. So he will do the editing, he and his team will do the editing and post them into different Chinese social network platforms. There are 7, I think, of them in total. Chinese social media is very active. They're very competitive also, so there are quite a few. There's not a single one that is dominant as YouTube, but there are quite a few different platforms. But in major ones, I have my channels in all of them. So that's the background. Now, my content mostly is focusing on what is going on in the West. I think in China, there's still a lot of misunderstanding about the United States, about the West. So, and of course, I talk about geopolitics, the relationship between China and the US, and now, what's going on in the Middle East and in Ukraine, those sort of things. But my main focus was still trying to tell people in China about the West themselves and how they report about different things and stuff like that. And so that is what I've been doing for the past slightly over a year or so. So I haven't done this real long. So in terms of the censorship, I want to cover 3 things. Why does China censor? And how does China censor? And how do people get around? Why does China censor? China believes the key to China's success is stability, peace and stability. No invasion from outsider, that's very important, but also internally, no turmoil. So that has been China's highest priority. And that's why China put a lot of military spending for defense purposes. But also in terms of censorship, that's another front in China's view, in Chinese government's view. The media is another front, just like a war that China wants to be in control. So the US clearly does not want to see stability anywhere in the world. And certainly the biggest competitor, China, US has been setting up a lot of NGOs within China, like the Ford Foundation, etc. The reason I'm bringing up the Ford Foundation is I want to give an example of how the NGOs are interfering with the Chinese policies. In 2015, there was a documentary. It's called Under the Dome. It was very influential. It got lots of attention when it first came out. The producer's name is Chai Jing. Now, the documentary is about pollution and environmental problems in China. China does have a pollution problem, and that documentary is very good at describing all those problems and complaints. And, it's basically describing like China like a horrible place, basically a hell. Okay. I don't want to say that it's not true what she was talking about. At the same time, any country going through very rapid industrialization, it has that kind of experiences, whether it's London or Los Angeles, anywhere. This is a process that every major country industrialization process will go through. Not to mention that the Chinese government was already fully aware of the situation that has been, and they have been working on it. It just, the things doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. This documentary was very one-sided. It's all about how bad it is. It doesn't present any solutions, nor does it mention any of the historical context and the fact that the Chinese government has been starting the work to improve these problems, to solve these problems. So it's very one-sided, I think, dishonest to the degree, because certain things that she is saying, she's making the connection. For example, that her daughter was born with some problem and she just blamed all it's on the environmental problem. Well, her daughter was actually born in the United States. She herself was a smoker, but she just is somehow blaming all on the environment in China. That's caused her daughter's health problem, for example. So it's very biased. And that documentary was sponsored by no other than Ford Foundation. She didn't review that. She said she self-financed that, but later it turns out she actually had a sponsor support from the Ford Foundation, for example. So you see, within China, these kind of things happens that the NGOs from the United States, they support this or that person and doing this or that show or program, etc., directly or indirectly criticizing the Chinese government. And in this particular case, I think it's particularly bad because environmental issues, she knew it is an issue. It is an issue that everybody can relate to. So the documentary became an instant hit and got lots of attention. And the government immediately felt the heat, like people are uproar about this, etc. And so it quickly was pulled off and it was banned and it's put off from all the major channels, etc. So this is just one example, like domestically, how these NGOs are using different means to put forward information that is biased and lopsided and unfairly reporting. Now, of course, people can say, well, the government can do a rebuttal, it's never as effective as the original documentary. Because first of all, whoever started the conversation first always has an advantage, a first mover advantage. That's just the fact, because people most remembers the first time you heard something. And then when later somebody else tell you something, in particular, it is the government, people will think, oh, this is a private organization. They are more reliable. We trust them more. Versus the government, oh, they're always doing propaganda. They're being paid to say good thing about government. So it's never going to be the same. Just the rebuttal, it's not going to be having the same effect. So this is just one example domestically, how the US is using different NGOs to affect the narratives. Externally, outside of China, there are always some anti-Chinese people, Chinese organizations. Some of these people are simply criminals, like this person, Guo Wengui. He is some kind of a tycoon, some kind of big businessman, big name business person in China for a while. But turns out he's deeply corrupted, and he, in some incidents, is simply just cheating and lying to his customers. So he was under investigation for all these criminal behaviors, like money laundering and corruption, etc. So he ran away. He escaped from China. And there's a whole bunch of these kind of people, including some corrupted Chinese officials. They got the money through illegal ways, and then once something being revealed, then they escape. The whole family will leave China and come to another country. These people have one thing in common, and that is they believe if they want to get the foreign government protection, in particular the US government, it's better for them to be anti-China. Now, from their heart, they are anti-China anyway, because they got into trouble with the Chinese government. So that's not hard for them. And so they are very much willing to lie, to deceive, to be biased, and to smear China. So that's one group of people. Then there's organizations like the Falun Gong, right? The religious cult. Falun Gong, I have personally just know a person who told me her sister was a Falun Gong member before Falun Gong was banned in China. And in her sister's case, my friend told me that she believed that Falun Gong basically killed her sister because her sister had cancer. I believe it's a breast cancer, one of those cancers that is absolutely treatable. And in her case, it was discovered early. So it's most likely if she get the proper treatment, she could have been cured. That's at least according to my friend. But Falun Gong, one of the things that they told their members is do not trust the modern medicine. So she refused to go to see the doctors, to go to hospitals. Instead, Falun Gong themselves established some kind of clinic that they said is based on the Falun Gong principle. So they encourage their members to go to these clinics that clearly is just doing it for the money. The people in there are not qualified, do not have certifications, do not have license, etc. The whole thing is illegal. It is kind of an underground clinic. Just simply is to make money out of desperate people. And her sister went to those places and paid big amount of money. In the end, was still dead. That's the story my friend told me about her sister. So that give you an idea why Falun Gong is banned in China. In any event, Falun Gong is one of those very active organizations overseas. These people, the criminals and the Falun Gong, and of course people who support the independence of Taiwan and etc. So these people together, they are, I call them anti-China groups. Now these people together, some of them do get support directly or indirectly from the NED, from even CIA directly. Now they are always looking for opportunities because they get money, they get paid, they need to show some kind of a work they have been done. One simple and very cost-effective way for them to do something is they themselves would register in the Chinese social media. And whenever there's something that they think can stir up troubles, then they start spreading rumors. The latest one is what happens with the former Prime Minister Li Keqiang's death. By all account, from what I see, it is just a natural death. He had a heart attack. Now, at age 68, you can see it's a little bit early, right? And he, by all account, he was a good prime minister, working hard, etc. There's nothing unusual about his death. But somehow now, there are rumors circling around all over, including even my parents are talking, like rumors were that Xi Jinping and Li Keqiang did not get along very well, which implying that somehow Xi Jinping has something to do with his death, which is very strange because Li Keqiang is no longer prime minister. He left it, I think, over a year ago. Why would Xi Jinping, for whatever reason, do something to him now? It doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, before Li Keqiang's death, there was never any report about disagreement with the two. So all of a sudden, you see all those overseas anti-China groups that are very actively spreading all these news, saying, oh, Li Keqiang is so well loved and blah, blah, trying to imply that Xi Jinping cannot stand him, cannot tolerate him, which means quite possibly that Xi Jinping somehow has something to do with his death. The whole thing just doesn't make any sense. But yet it is circulating everywhere. I saw quite a few places. Like I said, even my parents are telling me this. I just want to give those two examples to you what the Chinese government are facing, right? In China's case, China has 1.4 billion people. Now, these organizations, either domestic NGOs or outside China, those anti-China groups, they spreading information, and if nothing happens, then they will waiting for their next opportunity. They will never stop. They are always looking for opportunities to start spreading rumors and spreading sometimes very biased information, sometimes just lies. With this prime minister's death, it simply is just a lie. I don't see any evidence. But it doesn't stop it. People just continue to believe that. People do have the tendency to believe conspiracies, in particular, a famous person died suddenly. That's just the way it is. And the Chinese government is fully aware of it. That is really the main reason Chinese government is censoring certain information. Now, people who are staunch supporters of free speech always saying, well, the way to deal with the fake news, to deal with lies, is you can sue them, go fight them in the court. The reality is this: you can fight them in the court, but it takes time. Lots of times when damaging rumors started to spreading, it spread fast. And things can happen fast, and things can get out of control fast. By the time you sort out everything, by the time the truth came out, maybe the damage has already been done. And considering this is a country with 1.4 billion people, when things can go wrong, they can go very wrong, right? So that is the Chinese government's concern. And that's why they feel they have to prevent certain things to even go that far. That's the main reason they censor. In other words, what they see, their airspace, like a radio, television, self-media, social media, all these things together, they see it as also a sovereign problem, meaning they need a border to protect their sovereignty in this area too. It's not just the physical border, but also in the airwave border that's needed. And that's why this great firewall of China is built. That's the idea. Are there any better way to do? Maybe, I don't know, but I can fully understand why Chinese government is doing that. If you look at the European countries, I think the reason why European countries are very much like an echo chamber of the US mainstream media is because European countries do not have independent media. They don't. They very much has been infiltrated by all the US media, mainstream media, very much so. Independency and self-determination is so important for China. In this area, they most definitely want to be in control of. So that's the main reason that China want to control and censor information. How does China censor it? Well, there are the Great Firewall. China has its own search engine called the Baidu. So if you use Baidu to search certain words, you can't find it. For example, Dalai Lama, Falun Gong, there are certain sensitive words, you don't even find them, even including their articles, reports that are negative about the Dalai Lama, for example. The latest with his kissing a boy was very weird, looking like a pedophilia kind of behavior. Those were a lot of negativities about the Dalai Lama, but you can't find any of that. Good or bad, you can't find them. It's just a sensitive topic. They don't want people to talk too much. All right, so that's one way, the filtering in terms of the search. And then in terms of content, like my own, there has been programs that my own programs that has been too sensitive, but it depends on the channel. Some of my programs that are okay with one channel, but not the other. So that's, in that sense, that's very similar, like, YouTube versus Rumble kind of a thing, that it just depends on which channel. But the difference is in China, the channels are very equal. They are not like one is so dominant versus the other. So if you don't get published on this particular channel, you're probably okay with another one, which is just a different channel. It's not necessarily a less active and less popular channel. So that is, in that sense, it's probably better because you will always find somewhere that allow you content. So far, at least that's my experience. And now I can't say that I have been heavily involved with all the editing. My editor in China, he does do a lot of editing. He, he's more experienced, so he knows which are the topic sensitive words, and he would replace that or he would take them out and stuff like that. So you do need to be careful what you put out there. But by and large, my content are published in most Chinese social medias that I want to post them. But, it does need to be careful, certain sensitive word, etc. And you do need to know what you do. That's very similar with YouTube, I think. With YouTube, you also need to know. So that's how the censorship, the filtering itself and the content itself depends on the channel. In some cases, when the channel rejects you, you can modify it and then try again. But I do want to mention both Facebook and Google. People say, oh, Chinese government banned all these US apps and US social media. That's not true. In both Facebook and Google's case, they left themselves. They chose to leave. Unlike TikTok, that the US is keep on talking, banning it. TikTok doesn't really want to leave the United States. It is the US Congress want to have a law to ban Chinese app and foreign app or something. But China actually has no law to ban any particular app from any particular country. In both cases, they left themselves. Now, in Facebook cases, 2013, there was a terrorist attacks in Xinjiang. And one of the things those terrorists organize themselves is through Facebook groups. And so the Chinese government clearly is very angry with that and telling them to disable those groups, and Facebook just refused. And that's when Chinese government is saying, okay, you either comply with the law in this country, there are laws, right? Because the law says, whatever media you use, you cannot help with the terrorist attacks, help terrorist activities, and what you're doing is simply illegal in this country. You either do that, comply with the law, or you have to leave. And instead of comply with the law, Facebook chose to leave China. In Google's case, it's similar. Google doesn't want to comply with the Chinese law because there are certain words that the Chinese government wanted to filter and it refused. And again, the Chinese government saying either you comply with the law or you have to leave. And in Google's case, it left. Now, in Google's case, they don't totally left. they are very high profile, leaving China, made a big flash, etc., but then quickly came back with their other activities. They don't have the search engine in China, but they have a lot of other activities in China. So just so you know. So Google is here, but not their search engine. So these are the censorship situation in China. How does people get around? If you see me on YouTube, you know that I get around, right? The most common way is using VPN. Okay, and people do use VPN. Lots of people using VPN. Now, the thing is two things. One is not all VPNs work in China, so you need to find a VPN that works in China. The second is you need to get it installed before you come to China, because once you're here, you cannot access all the VPN sites. So that's something you need to keep in mind. The VPN, I tried a few when I was in the United States, but I find that some of the VPNs interesting is that they actually, when I was using in the US, I find some of the Chinese site actually was blocked. I find that's interesting. But in any event, the best way is if you are planning to come to China, check if you know somebody in China who's using some VPNs to see what the VPNs they're using. Does the Chinese government know about VPN? Of course, of course. But China never hard crackdown on the VPNs, even though using VPN, people here in China calls it climb over the wall because there is a wall, right? Climb over the wall is illegal in China, but the Chinese government never cracked down on it. Why is that? Well, because the percentage of people who are using VPN is still very small, very, very tiny. Most people, like my parents, they know VPN. They know I use VPN, and I even ask them if they want me to install one. And my mom's question was, why? She will never read anything from CNN, New York Times. That's, a foreign language. Why would she want to do that? And she's not particularly interested in knowing what Dalai Lama is doing, those Falun Gong, which she despises, etc. So she sees no need whatsoever to use VPN. And so is my dad, even though my dad can read English, but he's still not that interested. Most people, unless you really are interested in geopolitics, you don't have the need really for daily life. There are plenty of apps, plenty of information, plenty of websites for you to visit, really. And China also have video site, etc. It's just a lot of them. So there's plenty. So there is no need. For most people, there is no need to use VPN. It really is the expats, foreigners and people like me, doing program, etc. I'm just reading English. I prefer reading English a lot of times, and etc. So in terms of percentage, it's a very, very tiny fraction of the population who are using VPN. And it's not an issue. You see, contrary to what the Western believe, that China is this country that obsessively like to control its people, it's actually not true. China has 1.4 billion people. The government is very busy with, their highest priority is still poverty reduction and, high-tech research, the Belt and Road Initiative, all that kind of thing. As long as there is not a problem, the VPN itself is not causing any problem for Chinese government. The Chinese government will leave you alone. That's just how China's government function. They are not going to fixing something that is not a problem. Now, there has been times that the Chinese government thinking that there's just too much fake news floating around for whatever reason. They have been cracked down on VPN, which is rare. What they do is not to punish individuals who are using VPN. They just disable all the VPNs in the Chinese market. They would just do that. It doesn't happen often, but it did happen in the past. Yeah. So that's how Chinese government sees it. Normally it turns a blind eye. It lets you do whatever you want, unless they see there's some issues. I believe probably during the pandemic, there was a time they cracked down, disabled quite a few VPNs services, from different companies. But other than that, for the most part, you can use VPN. You don't stir any trouble. Nobody will bother you. That's how people get around. That's all for now. And I want to say thank you to people who have left message for me for my previous programs. I enjoy reading your comments. I'm learning through your comments as well. So thank you. And if you like my program, please hit the like button and subscribe. That's all. Thank you.